And then one summer when I was 12, there was a fenced off pool. So I used to climb the fence and stay in the shallow end and try to see if I could figure out a way to get to the other side, like without touching. And then by the end of the summer, I was like, I could swim. And you don't think of entrepreneurship the same way, but the idea is like, you got to get in the pool and you got to figure it out. And so I was kind of like, I want to get in the pool.
Hey, Carl. How you doing, brother?
Hey, Shawn, what's going on, man?
Doing good, doing good. Life is good. Happy Friday. On to a new week, Yeah. So thank you for your time today. And we have a guest I'd like to introduce today. I'd like to introduce you to Karim Blair, who's the owner and operator of AB Logistics. Welcome for joining us, Karim.
Hey, hi guys. How you guys
Hey,
doing?
Karim. Glad to have you on the show, man. Good
Glad
to see
to
you.
be here.
You look hot, but you also have a hat on. So,
Well, these are one of the things that happen when you're in Toronto. You think about where you want to be and you think about where you have to be.
Well said, man. Well said. Good to have you on the channel, man.
True. Yeah. So a little bit of background about Karim. He's a former IT director and an IT project manager, primarily specializing in non-for-profit organizations for the past 20 years. He recently made the bold step of becoming an entrepreneur and launching his very own logistics company that serves the Greater Toronto region. So we thought we absolutely have to have you on and talk to you and hear your stories. So thank you again, Karim, for joining us today.
Thanks. Again, I'm happy to be here, and it was a fun transition. And sometimes you don't spend so much time thinking about your journey when you're busy doing. You kind of caught up in the day to day. So every now and then, it's nice to reflect and kind of see where I've been and where I'm headed.
That's a good segue, because actually I want to know a little bit more about that. So tell me about that journey, and if you can reflect with us. I'm curious to hear some of your background and your relationship. I know you and Shawn are good friends, so I'd like to hear a little bit more about that as well.
Okay, well, given the format, I won't speak forever about me and Shawn and our relationship, our bond. So my wife always kids that he's my wife. So anyway, but
same here.
But so my journey really is I'm like a closet nerd essentially, and so I like sports and stuff, but technology is always a true passion, and so that was kind of where the push came, and meeting with Shawn, somebody else who is in love with technology and loves playing around with new things and new software, and so it was kind of natural to kind of get into tech, and so working through that, you kind of also with the idea that as an aside, my mom always kind of had this guiding principle that she kind of taught me from an early age that basically, if you can help, why not? There isn't really leave things better than you found it is the simplest way to put it. So with that, my love of technology, and that's kind of how I got into not-for-profits, because I could take my tech love and kind of help technology and help people at the same time. It was kind of a fit. So just rolling through that over time is kind of how I found my niche, so to speak. And then, you grow up, you get married, and now having children and stuff, it was just kind of, you're rolling through this journey over time. And the idea always was that I would get to do my own thing at some point. Not because it's bad to be an employee, but it's not,
you can say it. We've all been there.
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes it's certain time, especially doing project-based work, you can understand that there's time constraints and approvals or change management that can really delay the execution of just getting things done. And so sometimes when you're in control of those things, you can layer things together quicker. You can accelerate decision making and focus on things that are more in alignment with your objectives. So those are a lot of the main like drivers to getting to go do something, along with the idea that like sometimes you don't know you can do something until you do it, right?
Right.
And that's it. So you know, it's funny, like this is not the best analogy, but I never grew up and got swimming lessons and all that kind of stuff. And then one summer when I was 12, there was a fenced off pool. And so every day, like the classes would end there at 11, and from like noon to 3, nobody would be in the pool. So I used to climb the fence and stay in the shallow end and try to see if I could figure out a way to get to the other side, like without touching. And then like, you know, by the end of the summer, I was like, I could swim. I wasn't really a good swimmer. Like I'm not gonna tread water and relax, but I could definitely get from one edge to the other edge.
Yeah.
And like, you don't think of entrepreneurship the same way, but the idea is like, you got to get in the pool and you got to figure it out. And so I was kind of like, I want to get in the pool.
I like
I'm
that.
Swimming, man. Now I'm swimming. So
I like that analogy. I really like that analogy, especially from you getting from one end to another. I mean, as you're saying, as a project manager. has anyone else heard this story? I guess not, right? But it's very interesting. Like it's a great analogy. You know, teaching yourself how to swim, getting from one end to the other. That's almost PM as well. Like I mean, project management and freelance, they go hand in hand, because essentially that's what you're doing, right? Like I really like that. I see how that how you're trying to get to one end to the other, but learning how to do that. Certainly when my early days of PMing, that's exactly how it was as well. And Shawn, I'm sure you can relate as well, eh?
Absolutely. Yeah. I definitely want to unpack that further. And the analogies just make it so crystal clear, and I can definitely relate. I'm fascinated, like what compelled you to move from the IT director, IT project management, to becoming an entrepreneur? What was that catalyst for you, that driver?
Well, a big part of it was like being ready, to be totally honest. Like I had some small discussions with you, obviously, kind of about like the idea. And then like we talked back and forth about it and about like some of the pros and cons. And the push away from, because I had been doing consulting work already. So the idea to like transition didn't feel as far of a stretch, but changing industries did feel like, whoa, wait a second, wait, this is totally different. But like digging into the industry, and probably like one of the things that was the most eye-opening was like my shortest projects are like 3 months, right? So like everything takes long, just because of the nature of the way IT works. Even with agile projects where you're doing sprints and stuff, you're still releasing small packages. You're not finished. And the appeal with the logistics was you could start and finish something like in a day. So you could go in, you could talk to someone, assess what their situation is, set up the contract, and then it was done. So like, as an aside, like if you guys go and order like a pile of bricks for your backyard because you're gonna make a hut, like, you know, you buy the bricks come to your house, like that, it's over. Then you get to build your stuff. But like that part of the project is finished, and that was really like the appeal, that like you could start and finish something, and it doesn't have to linger. Where like every software implementation has to linger. Change management has a whole cycle. Like, you know, there's massaging egos and massaging people, and like there wasn't much of that. It was like, as if you had tight customer service, you were well organized, so that like the PM stuff, I could transition was easy. But the appeal was like, hey, there's a start and stop. Yes, because I don't get that. And so like that was it. And so it was kind of, that was really the big appeal. And then like, and the pandemic hit, and then like it was kind of like, oh, sometimes timing is good.
So I did want to ask Karim, with the pandemic, have you found, you know, in being home, I imagine it's created a a surge in people still wanting product, but not physically being able to go out to stores and places to get. Have you experienced, how have you been impacted and the logistics company through this transition?
Yeah, it's been interesting just because like, you know, the idea like reaching your niche, so to speak. And that like that's one of the like the difficult things you find when you're starting out like with any business, that getting that laser focus, because it's kind of like you want money, so you're gonna say yes to everything because you kind of need to keep the lights on, get things going, so to speak. But in a weird way, the pandemic almost forced me to like tighten in like what I was trying to do, because originally like the original focus was broader and like not really, what's the best way to describe it, not really in an area that actually, when I thought about it more long term, would best served me. So having to react to like market conditions and tighten your focus actually helped like my company to be a lot better and more productive, because like you weren't chasing the unicorn, if that makes any sense. Just things that just didn't make sense, weren't really a real fit, as much as like, so you focused on things that were a bit more aligned. And yeah, because one of the downsides to the pandemic is there was also a lot more like fly by nights and people looking to take advantage. Like in everything, there's like always a price war and a race to the bottom. And I was always like, I don't want to get involved in that because it's like not sustainable. Like it's, and so you want to like, you also want to provide viable income and stable jobs for people at the same time. And so that was, if there was an issue, that was something that I found, is that people were looking to take advantage of folks with the way things were working. And so spending some time finding the right stuff was probably a big takeaway from the pandemic, as far as like teasing out the right things to look for, and like looking past just the first year and just getting your head above, like if you're going back to the swimming analogy, focusing less on just getting your head above water and trying to focus on like where you're actually trying to go and what type of things are going to help you get there. And so that's really what you got to work on during the pandemic, with being home and having like endless amounts of time. And so as much as being distracted and like getting all types of information and learning quite a bit, as far as immersing yourself in something new. But that was really the biggest takeaway. It's like, okay, like, because you can spend a lot of energy doing things that aren't going to get you anywhere. And so that's it, along with like the financial implications, like financial based decision making is, I guess, is a good way to frame it. Because I didn't have like a commerce background and all that kind of stuff. So learning and applying a lot of those principles were all very new. But it's interesting to see like how like entrepreneurship benefits life. And I mentioned that in that so because I'm forced to pay attention to like ledger receipts, like, you know, things like receivables, outgoings, your cash flow, things that were kind of like, I mean, they're accounting formulas and graphs, but somebody else takes care of that. Well, that I'm somebody else. And so with that, like it forces you to kind of learn and understand those things. And so why I bring that up is now in my life, I have my annual budget, and then I have my monthly targets. And then so you can kind of see your regular bank account, which is like your life flow. So things are coming in and out. How much do I need to like achieve what I want to do personally, like aside from like the business cycle? And like, are those aligned? Because they need to be. Like, not that like you need to, like, I mean, if your goal is to be a millionaire, that's fine. If you just want to be comfortable, that's fine too. But being able to manage both of those together, and the idea that like understanding that stuff takes away a lot of the stress. Because then like it kind of focuses you on kind of what you need to do, versus like you're proactive versus reactive. And like being in a reactive position is difficult because like you really don't ever feel like you're in control. And like, because of like, you know, project manager, like everything starts with a plan. You need to know what's up, so that like, because if you know what's up and then something comes up, you can react. But if you're just reacting, everything is hard.
Makes sense.
Yeah. That makes so much sense. I'm curious to know now. I mean, you gave us several examples of the, I guess, lessons learned, right? The being a niche, being a niche, or knowing your niche, understanding that now you are a player that has to understand the economics and the finances. I'm curious to know, now that you're in this new career path and beyond, I guess, COVID in 2020, what are some of the, I guess, biggest learnings you got, and maybe challenges that you're overcoming now in this new career path?
The biggest challenge is like newness, essentially. So with every industry, when you're new, brand recognition is difficult. Like if you want to buy something, like 9 out of 10 people jump on Amazon because it's easy. So Amazon doesn't have a brand recognition issue, but every new business does. And so that's probably the biggest hurdle. And I haven't really discovered the best way around that versus like I said, just to dive in, start meeting people, talking to people, and starting to deliver on what you say you're going to do, whether it's the smallest thing or the biggest thing. Because people like people they can count on. And the idea that like one principle I've stuck to is I'm not going to compete on price. So a lot of times I'll walk away from business if people are very happy with everything, but they want it cheaper. Because if it's one thing, I'm uncomfortable working in that format because I'm not going to win a race to the bottom. And so the idea is like there's value adds that you're going to get in other ways. And if they don't suit you, that's understandable. Then, we're not necessarily a fit. So that's what I was saying about alignment. Like every person out there isn't the ideal customer for me, just like every client isn't the ideal customer for your business. And so when there's alignment, like let's work together. And so, and like part of the thing too is I'm happy to refer people to other folks and other people that will be more of a fit. So when something does come up that's a fit for me, that's part of it too, is like, okay, we're not a fit, but now I'm ready to deal with you. And stuff like that has also been pretty beneficial. And so that's kind of the learnings going forward, along with, like I said before, the financial stuff is probably the biggest thing in terms of the using like financial calculations to make sound decisions rather than just things feeling right.
Yeah.
Because a lot of things that look right and feel right, like say, this is cool, what does the math say? And the math says, nah. Or it says like, you need to make 3 times that for this to be viable. Then you're like, wait a second, okay. Then maybe it doesn't make sense. And so that's taught me a lot. There's been a bunch of times I've thought things would make sense and they look good on the like surface level, but once you start running your calculations, you start to realize things aren't quite as clear cut. They don't make the same sense you thought they did, which is why it's really helpful to have those things, because it detaches you from an emotional decision, and like you can do something based on something that's like, I don't know if you want to call it scientific, but I feel like it's sound. It's a non-emotional decision, which can be difficult because there isn't always a huge number of people you're bouncing your idea off, right? Because at the end, like the buck does stop with you. So it's nice to be like, okay, well, here's like the little decision matrix I can go through. So
I wonder if I can ask a follow-up.
Sure.
I'm curious, like 2 things, right? So using that same analogy that you're swimming, you're trying to get end to end. So you're used to, as a PM, getting end to end, and now in this new world, you get end to end. Would you say that if we use that analogy, are you still in the middle? Are you still learning this new frontier?
Yeah, for sure. And like,
yeah,
one of the things that like, I guess, I think this is also like cliche with the whole entrepreneurship's a journey. And but like it really is. And I don't know that like there's ever like an end. if that makes any sense.
Okay.
In that,
Okay.
because you get to a certain point, but by the time you get to that point, you're not who you were when you started. So you're evolving, right? So because you're evolving the whole way, like your goals are evolving at the same time too. So like what you envision for your business in year 1 and what your business is in like year 3 and year 5, it's probably not going to be the same thing. And
Interesting.
that's okay. And that's okay. It is, right? Like, it's the worst thing I feel like you could do is like, okay, I have this hard, steady vision. That's it. And you never go back and touch it again. When like every 6 months you learn things, people are influencing you in different ways that like, you should always be able to reassess and kind of see what's going on, because you can compare it to the plan you have, but also add or change things. Like if there's a new feature enhancement and you're stuck to only what you're going to do and you can't take advantage of it, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yes.
And so like, it doesn't
also
mean to, yeah, go ahead. Sure.
No, sorry, not to cut you off. Continue.
No, I was just saying that like, because like sometimes if like you get like, not you specifically, but the idea is like we're so prescriptive about how we're going to go about doing something that like you put blinders on and that's all we can do, versus like you can go ahead on your journey but still like take it in, because if there's an opportunity to do something better along the way, like you need to be, it's a fast moving, adaptable environment. You need to be able to make change. And if you're too focused on just the one thing, I feel like you, not saying you don't want to focus on your goal, but you have to, because there's environmental factors that are going to change, you need to be able to adapt to some of those things.
Well said. I was just going to ask another thing where I'm curious to know, again, using this analogy, I love the pool analogy, so I'm going to just use it. Now that you've transitioned to this career path, do you look back and is there anything that you miss in your previous path?
The only thing that like, I wasn't say the only, but one of the key things that I miss is new technology. And like, it's one of the reasons I enjoy being around students, because they remind me of this, they're like, oh, nothing impossible. And it's interesting to really hear that, because sometimes you get beaten down in life and you're like, oh, you can't do that, or well, that'll take way longer. And it's, yeah, why not? And it's really interesting to hear that. So if there's something I miss, that's kind of what I miss, because there's lots of like new technologies and codes and stuff, and I'm like, I get late. And that's just because you got other stuff going on. You don't have time to be digging into like, you know, the emerging technologies and playing with like a lot of that stuff. Like in a different life, I would be playing a lot more with blockchain, like messing with Angular and playing with like emerging technologies and stuff. Where now I'm kind of like, I heard of it and I know about it, but it's like, I'm not elbow deep at all. And that's, no, I know what I'm good at, right? So it's like,
you can't dabble in that anymore, right? Not this time. Yeah,
no,
I got it.
It's fun. That's what, as a miss, I like it's, but like my background technically is in development, and so it's always like in the back of my mind. I'm like, yeah, I wonder if I can still do it. And then you kind of want to, and you're like, I mean, there's only so much time in the day, right? So you're just like,
yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's what that cost benefit does. It lets you know, like, paying for development quicker. So.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. I understand where you come from, man. You know, I just want to take a chance again to thank you for your time and the opportunity to hear your story and your transition. And you've given us some really great analogies, as well as really critical factors as relates to right sizing delivery and managing your price points and not avoid racing to the bottom. And also that focus too, just like a fountain of wisdom you just applied upon us. So I really appreciate it.
Well, the one thing I always took from you that is drive. Like, we can talk about a whole bunch of other things, but that's really where it starts from. And if you don't have that, you have it in abundance. But there's a whole bunch of other, it's true. But like, that's really what it is. Because like, there's gonna be things that come up. There's roadblocks. Nothing's easy. But if you don't have that drive, you're not gonna get it done. And just to touch on the swimming thing, I do find it funny that three black guys are talking about swimming. Big difference.
Oh man.
Well said, sir.
Some cliches are true.
I had to take swimming lessons because I had to do it for physio. I ripped my tendon, so I had to use swimming as a part of physio. So I learned.
Oh boy,
that was like, yeah, but that was like 15 years ago. So I wasn't swimming up to that until then.
Call you Carl Phelps?
No, not even.
Yeah, in regards to my swimming, yeah, let's just not go there, man.
We've had a few races in the pool.
So, all right, cool. Well, it's definitely a pleasure as always. Thank you, Karim. Carl, you know, we do what we do. Thoroughly enjoyed these sessions with you. And to our audience out there, so there you have it, folks. Here's another discussion about transformation and in the real world. So definitely join us next time for another hard-hitting episode of Transformation on As Is To Be. Peace.
Peace.